A boost for Brexit Britain, as Nissan says it will expand its car production in the UK. New cars will be built in Sunderland, securing thousands of jobs. The Prime Minister calls it fantastic news for the UK. It comes as the latest figures show the economy grew faster than expected in the 3 months after the Brexit vote.
A very strong third quarter growth. That tells us that we go into the period of negotiation for our exit from the EU from a position of strength, with the economy doing very well.
We'll be getting analysis from our assistant political editor. Also this lunchtime, French officials declare Calais' jungle camp now empty, as aid workers say about 100 young people were still forced to sleep rough. A warning from the doctors' regulator that poor morale among doctors could put patients at risk. Remembering the Queen Mother, the Queen unveils a statue of her late mother at the Prince of Wales's model town in Dorset. And bittersweet for the BBC, the Great British Bake Off goes out with a record audience.
And here in the south, the coroner has criticised Southern Health for failing a severely depressed woman who fell to her death. And the new clues into how 4 people were wrongly convicted of the Guildford pub bombings of 1974.
Good afternoon and welcome to the BBC News at 1. A double boost for Brexit Britain today. First came the news that the economy has grown faster than expected in the first 3 months following the Brexit vote. Then, an hour later, an announcement from carmaker Nissan that it's building 2 new models at its plant in Sunderland, securing 7,000 jobs. There had been fears it would move production into the EU. The Prime Minister called it fantastic news for the UK, whilst Chancellor Philip Hammond said Britain would go into the negotiations with the EU in a position of strength. Our economics correspondent John T. Bloom reports.
In the referendum, Sunderland famously voted to leave the EU. Many thought it was like turkeys voting for Christmas. Instead, Christmas has come early for the northeast of England. The huge Nissan plant exports the vast majority of its production to the rest of Europe, but Nissan has voted to stay in the UK, and it's putting its money where its mouth is, investing huge sums in its Sunderland plant to build not just 1 but 2 new models, the Qashqai and the X-Trail.
This is fantastic news for the British economy from Nissan. This is a very important commitment of investment here in the UK. I think it shows the strength of our economy. We've been showing Nissan and others that we are committed to getting the best possible deal from the future relationship that we will be negotiating with the European Union. And we wish to ensure and assure the competitiveness of the British economy.
This decision will guarantee 7,000 jobs at the plant in Sunderland and 28,000 in suppliers across the country. But Nissan only made this decision after getting what it calls support and assurances from the British government. That's thought to include a promise of extra help if Brexit damages the competitiveness of the Sunderland plant. Even so, the industry is delighted that Nissan is investing in the UK.
It's absolutely imperative that off the back of this positive news we see a renewed commitment from government to support the UK automotive industry to ensure the conditions that have made UK automotive thrive and prosper continue in the future. We need to remain in Europe, we need access to talent, and we need to remain in the customs union.
This news will certainly be a boost for manufacturing industry in the UK. It's still shrinking in size, although the economy as a whole has continued to grow strongly. In the 3 months after the referendum, it increased in size by 0.5%. Not quite as good as a growth rate of 0.7% in the previous quarter, but still a respectable performance. Once again, it was the huge services sector that led the way.
Services overall has been very strong, but within services we saw business and financial services actually slightly weaker in terms of growth than in the first half of the year, and this is significant given the importance of this sector for the UK economy.
Manufacturing, however, is still suffering. This company in Sheffield makes wire components for the construction industry. They're sold around the world. It sees Brexit as a long-term threat to the business, though the fall in the value of the pound means this company is seeing a short-term boost.
We will make gains. We are 85% export, 40% of sales in euros, 30% in US dollars. So clearly the value of those sales will go up in UK sterling.
Many people thought that after the Brexit vote the economy would hit a brick wall, but so far it hardly seems to have stumbled. And Nissan's decision to invest in Sunderland will be seen as a vote of confidence in the UK's future as a major car manufacturer. Jonty Bloom, BBC News.
Well, let's speak to Norman Smith, our assistant political editor in Westminster. Obviously pleased, the Prime Minister saying this shows Britain is open for business post-Brexit.
Yeah, Simon, I suspect there were ministers up and down Whitehall this morning going, yes, come on, my son, because this is a huge decision, not just the growth figures, but particularly the Nissan decision, because if Nissan had chosen to move production, that would have been a body blow to Brexit Britain. It would have been seen as a vote of no confidence. There would have been fears other companies would have followed. It would be a shattering blow to the North East at a time when the government has promised to ensure Brexit benefits the whole of the UK, and Nissan exports around 70% of its UK-based cars to the EU. That would have been taken as an indication that Nissan just didn't believe we could survive outside of Europe. The big question, though, is what is the deal? What has been done to keep Nissan here? Now, you talk to ministers and they say we looked them in the eye. We reassured them we were going to get a good deal from the rest of Europe. We reassured them about an industrial strategy. We reassured them about innovation and developing electric cars in Britain. What we don't know is whether there was any cash on the table, whether there was an offer to compensate companies like Nissan if things go badly and if tariffs are imposed. And if there was, then there will be other companies thinking if it was good for Nissan, it should be good for us too.
And Norman, these growth figures better than the rather pessimistic Treasury predictions again.
Yeah, and that will be seen as, if you like, a rebuff to the doom mongers, who incidentally have included the Treasury, who before the referendum was suggesting the economy would begin to slow up. Far from it. And Philip Hammond, the current Chancellor, actually talked about the chilling effect of the referendum. In fact, we seem to be doing much better than anyone expected. Why? By and large, down to ordinary folk still spending money. In other words, people have not been freaked out by Brexit. Also, the city and the service sector still keeping the economy ticking along. What does it mean? Well, ministers believe means we can go to Europe now and drive a much tougher bargain. It strengthens our negotiating position to get a good deal with Europe.
Norman, thank you very much, Norman Smith. French officials say that all of the inhabitants of the migrant camp in Calais, known as the Jungle, have been removed from the site. They said that since the operation began on Monday, just over 5,500 people had left the area, with many of them going to reception centres elsewhere in France. But charities on the ground report that many child refugees have been left unregistered with nowhere to go. Our correspondent Simon Jones is in Calais for us. Simon.
The authorities here are effectively saying, job done, we've moved all the migrants from the jungle. But if you take a look round here, you can see there are still hundreds in the town, some of them vulnerable children. In the past few minutes, an announcement has been made to this group saying that if they are under 17, they can get on buses to go to centres elsewhere in France, and they still will be able to go over to Britain if they do have family links. But it's been another morning of chaos and confusion. With much of the jungle destroyed, some slept on the street. And associations who support migrants say up to 80 unaccompanied children had nowhere to go last night until they were forced to step in.
We had nowhere for around 80 unaccompanied children in camp to sleep. They had come to the warehouse for processing earlier in the day and had then been turned away and told to go back to camp, which of course is a very dangerous place, especially now with all the fires raging.
The authorities say all children will get places in centres, but outside this one, on the edge of the jungle, there's confusion. And inside, many migrants remain in the camp, despite the operation to clear people from there being declared over. As the demolition continues, the police are not letting us any further into the jungle than here, but they have been going round shelter by shelter, checking whether anyone is still there. The aim of the authorities is to have this whole area cleared by Monday evening. The authorities say the migrants still left in Calais never lived in the jungle and have come here from other towns in the past few days to try to get places in reception centres.
We don't want the registration process we had here to attract every migrant in France. Our mission, to offer shelter to all the migrants in the camp, has been achieved.
Look.
But the police commissioner admitted his operation is not at an end.
We found more people inside. Not a lot, but we found people.
Some people haven't left?
Yeah.
What's going to happen?
For the moment, we try to find a solution.
Thousands of migrants have gone in the past 3 days, but what will happen to those who haven't remains unclear. Well, I think the authorities will be satisfied that in the space of 4 days they have largely cleared the camp. But the prefect has already admitted that Calais is attracting migrants from elsewhere despite the jungle being closed down, and they will have to keep a close eye on that to stop a new jungle springing up once again.
Simon Jones, thank you very much. UNICEF says the attack on a school in northern Syria yesterday could amount to a war crime and is one of the most serious in the country's 5-year conflict. It's thought as many as 22 children were killed. There's been strong condemnation of Russia at the UN Security Council, which is due to meet again later today to discuss the situation. James Longman's report from Beirut includes some distressing images.
The menace of a warplane, and then this. Thought to be the airstrike that hit the village of Has yesterday. This little girl repeats, "I want my mum, I want to go to my mother." The older one screams, "The plane hit us, I don't want to go to school." According to UNICEF, 22 children were killed, along with 7 of their teachers. Possibly the most serious attack against a school in over 5 years of war. The strikes destroyed homes too. This man screams for Allah to take revenge. "We have no one but you, God," he wails. Russia called the attack horrible, and its UN ambassador said he hoped his country was not involved. But at the UN Security Council, more condemnation for their role in Syria, particularly in Aleppo.
The results in human terms have been horrific. Aleppo has essentially become a kill zone. Since my last report to this council less than a month ago, 400 more people have been killed and nearly 2,000 injured.
Russia's response was typically dismissive.
I don't agree. You know, Mr. O'Brien, if we needed to be preached to, we would go to a church. If we wanted to hear poetry, we'd go to a theater.
No diplomacy, no agreements. But if deliberate, the hit on the school means yet another war crime in Syria's never-ending conflict. James Longman, BBC News, Beirut.
Here, the General Medical Council has said there is a state of unease within the medical profession across the UK, which risks affecting patients. In a report, the organisation, which sets standards for doctors, says the causes are complex, but the signals of distress are unmistakable. Our health editor, Hugh Pym, reports.
There have been warnings before about the state of the NHS, but now in an unprecedented intervention, the official regulator, the GMC, has come up with its own hard-hitting assessment. In its annual report on the medical profession, it says services are struggling under the burden of severely constrained funding and rising patient numbers, and goes on to say there are unmistakable signs of distress from the medical profession, suggesting a state of unease. The report says the number of doctors moving immediately from foundation to specialist medical training has fallen, with some citing burnout as a reason for needing a break. It notes that the standard of care by UK doctors remains among the highest in the world, but adds that they are coming under intense pressure.
The GMC is politically neutral. It's answerable to Parliament, not government, and we try not to take a political stance. But for this year, first time I think ever, in our report we are hearing from our staff on the ground across 300 hospitals that the pressure for very experienced doctors who've been in the NHS all their career has reached unprecedented levels. That is a signal that we shouldn't ignore. We're hearing that loud and clear, and much louder than in the previous few years.
Save our NHS! Save our NHS!
The GMC report also refers to the junior doctors' dispute in England and says the anger revealed levels of alienation which should cause everyone to pause and reflect. The Department of Health, responsible for England, said it was investing in the NHS's plan to transform services for the future, and central to that was listening to the concerns of staff. A separate report said Scotland's health service failed to meet 7 out of 8 performance targets in the last financial year. Audit Scotland said rising costs and staffing problems were piling pressure on the service. The Scottish Government said staffing and spending were at record levels. Hugh Pym, BBC News.
2 strong earthquakes hit central Italy in the space of 2 hours last night, close to the area where a quake killed nearly 300 people in August. Both tremors occurred east of the city of Perugia. Power lines are down and many buildings have collapsed, but there are no reports of serious injuries. Andy Moore reports.
Fresh aftershocks this morning in one of the towns worst hit by the quakes. And this is what it was like to be inside a house last night. These scenes were filmed on CCTV. This British woman experienced it for herself.
The noise is a build-up of a horrendous rumble, and you just know, you just run. The lights were out and the neighbours were all out, and as usual, everyone was holding on to each other and pretty scary.
A church left in ruins by previous quakes sustained even more damage. But amidst all the falling rubble, there were remarkably few casualties. Many left their homes after the first tremor, so they were in the open when the second, even stronger quake hit 2 hours later. It was felt from Naples to Venice and in these TV studios in Rome.
Del nostro studio che tremano e vediamo anche I riflettori che stanno oscillando paurosamente.
In the immediate aftermath, diggers were brought in to make buildings safe. The emergency services dealt with dozens of minor injuries, but few serious casualties. Access to the damaged areas was hampered by landslides.
I was at home inside when the first quake hit, and then we went outside because the earth kept moving all the time.
It was something I can't even begin to describe. We were really scared. Everything started to shake and things started falling down on us. I can't put it in words.
Central Italy has been on edge since the Amatrice earthquake in the summer that killed nearly 300. People have been warned that more strong aftershocks can be expected. Andy Moore, BBC News.
Just after 1:15, our top story this lunchtime. A double boost for Britain. The economy has grown faster than expected following the Brexit vote, and Nissan is building its 2 new models in Sunderland. And coming up, the dramatic fall in the number of global wildlife, and it's all down to human activity.
And coming up on South Today just before 1:30, the latest weather. Plus, a coroner has criticised Southern Health for failing a severely depressed woman who fell to her death. And a royal welcome in Dorset as Her Majesty the Queen visits Poundbury today.
Now, we're hearing today that animals on Earth are facing the largest mass extinction since the dinosaurs. The Worldwide Fund for Nature is one of the conservation organisations which has crunched the figures and put together the report. They say by the end of the decade, global wildlife populations will have declined by more than 2/3 from 1970s levels, and it's humans who are to blame. Our science correspondent Rebecca Morell reports.
The world's wildlife is under threat. From African elephants, whose numbers are plummeting because of poaching, to Europe's killer whales being killed off by pollution. The Living Planet report looked at 3,700 different species, and it's found that since 1970, populations have fallen by nearly 60%. That's a decline of about 2% every year.
Extinction is actually a natural process, but we are seeing higher levels of extinction than is naturally predicted. So we are already seeing extinctions, but yes, we would expect those extinctions only to increase if we don't stop these population declines.
But it's animals found in rivers, lakes and wetlands that are suffering the biggest losses. Populations of European eels have collapsed, while the range of the Ganges River dolphin has dramatically reduced. And for amphibians, 1 in 3 species is now under threat of extinction. The researchers say that humans are to blame, from overfishing to deforestation and climate change. They warn if nothing is done, wildlife populations could fall by 2/3 by 2020. But some conservationists say the way the data's presented doesn't give the full story.
So it's true that the overall index is declining very markedly, but of course it's an overall measure that's aggregated up from many different cases, and it hides some really important differences between species, between different parts of the world, and between different habitats.
But amid the declines, there have been some successes. Wild tiger numbers have now risen for the first time in a century, and giant pandas are now no longer classified as endangered. But it will be a challenge to reverse a problem that's on such a large scale. Rebecca Morell, BBC News.
Researchers say every child should be screened for an inherited form of heart disease that affects around 1 in 270 people. Scientists at Queen Mary University of London say a simple blood test could prevent about 600 heart attacks each year in England and Wales in people under the age of 40. Our health correspondent Dominic Hughes has more.
Kim Hoare knows all about the cost of familial hypercholesterolemia, also known as FH.
There we go.
Over the generations, this inherited condition has taken a heavy toll.
My mother was 39, her mother 40 and her mother 39 all died from a heart attack due to having FH.
Kim's 2 children have also been diagnosed with FH, so like their mum, now have to watch what they eat and take medication.
It's such a devastating and catastrophic condition, really, for the family members who are left behind, or if you have it, and you have this fear that it's going to happen to you.
But researchers now believe a simple blood test carried out when toddlers have their routine vaccinations could help identify many more people at risk of an early heart attack. FH is the main cause of inherited early heart disease. It's believed to affect around 1 in 270 children, characterised by high cholesterol levels. If left untreated, young adults who have the condition have around a 10-fold increased risk of heart attack before the age of 40. But now a study involving more than 10,000 children in England and Wales suggests that many more people could be identified and treated.
Children are already passing through general practice at a time when parents are particularly focused on the preventive health of their child and therefore their families as a whole. So this is an opportunity to provide a population sweep to pick up people with inherited heart disease with a view to avoiding premature early heart attacks.
And it's not just babies who are picked up in the screening. Because it's an inherited condition, one parent will also have it, so the process screens 2 generations at the same time. In March of this year, the UK National Screening Committee decided there wasn't enough evidence to support a universal screening programme.
So this is the magazine that I got from Heart UK.
But Kim believes early diagnosis could make a crucial difference to thousands of families who may not realise the danger they face. Dominic Hughes, BBC News.
The FA says it's launching an investigation after 7 people were arrested last night as ugly scenes of hooliganism affected West Ham's League Cup victory over Chelsea at the London Stadium. Trouble flared in the last minutes of the game as seats, plastic bottles and coins were thrown. Richard Conway has more.
Many believed English football had consigned such scenes to its past. But last night, West Ham and Chelsea fans surged towards one another inside the former Olympic Stadium and were held apart only by desperate stewards and police. Seats were ripped up and thrown as tensions between supporters boiled over in the closing minutes of the game. 1,000 stewards and a heavy police presence ensured minimal trouble outside the stadium before and after the match. But the ugly scenes left many fans, including children, shaken by the experience.
Watching the game, we're in the front row, near to the home fans. Suddenly there's a whole load of coins coming over. My daughter Victoria got hit by 7 coins all over her body. Stewards didn't seem to do much at all, they just let it carry on. Other kids were hit in the front and it was a disabled section.
I'm lucky I got out of the game now and it's finished.
In a statement, the club said West Ham United and London Stadium partners unreservedly condemn the behaviour of individuals involved in incidents during this evening's fixture with Chelsea. Once identified, those found to have acted improperly will be banned from attending any West Ham United fixtures for life.
Whatever happened, we are totally against it as a club, as a team. For those kind of things to happen, especially in England, is unacceptable. Unacceptable.
West Ham became tenants at the London Stadium in August, and control of stewarding and security is the responsibility of an operating company. It has made changes to how fans are segregated following isolated outbreaks of trouble earlier this season. But in the wake of last night's incidents, many feel further amendments to the stadium are now needed. The Football Association has launched an investigation, and both clubs will be asked to give their comments on events. But with a string of high-profile fixtures still to come this season, the pressure on West Ham to achieve a secure stadium is set to increase. Richard Conway, BBC News.
A royal visit with a difference today. Prince Charles and Camilla were joined by the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh at his Poundbury village in Dorset, and the reason was to unveil a statue of the Queen Mother. Our royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell sent this report.
Quite the family day out. Prince Charles bringing his mother and father to see the place which is the repository of all his dreams about sensitive urban design and traditional architecture. It's Poundbury, constructed over the past 23 years on the outskirts of Dorchester, on farmland owned by the Prince as Duke of Cornwall. It's been a project in which he's taken a close interest right from the start.
We've got so used over the last 40 or 50 years to looking at planning and building and design, local and urban design, in one particular way. Like you only build housing estates, which always have cul-de-sacs. The point I feel we ought to re-examine again is how to design on a traditional basis again.
Today, Poundbury is home to nearly 3,000 people. It's a mixture of soberly built homes, which might be found in many towns and villages, and then a central square where the designers have shed their inhibitions. So in this rural Dorset setting, here's a block of flats which is said to have a passing resemblance to Buckingham Palace. Next to it, a rather grandiose construction called the Royal Pavilion. The state trumpeters sounded a fanfare from the balcony of Poundbury's palace, and the Queen concentrated on shaking a lot of hands. Prince Charles was busy pointing out some of the sights to his wife. Across the square, for example, there's a public house named after her. There was a visit to a supermarket and a quick inspection of the shelves, and then out to the square, where Prince Charles recalled the struggle he'd had to establish Poundbury.
25 years ago, all this was a mere dream. To most people, a completely mad dream.
The Queen and Prince Charles unveiled a statue of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, a royal presence in a community which has defied its detractors and which shows every sign of flourishing. Nicholas Witchell, BBC News, Poundbury.
Now for the BBC, it was the icing on the cake. A record audience for the final edition of the Great British Bake Off, peaking at 14.8 million just before 9 o'clock when PE teacher Candice Brown was announced as the winner. After the Christmas specials have been broadcast on the BBC in December, the show will eventually be shown on Channel 4. Our entertainment correspondent Lisa Mazimba reports a warning there is some flash photography.
That the winner of the Great British Bake Off 2016, Candice!
The moment the winner of this year's Great British Bake Off was announced. Around the country, 14 million viewers, the biggest overnight audience of 2016, watched as Candice won the final of the most popular show on British television. This year's bakers watched too, of course, at a party hosted by losing semi-finalist Selassie. Winner Candice Brown says she's still taking it all in.
It hasn't sunk in at all, and I'm not sure when it will do, actually. It's just all, yeah, it's just crazy but amazing.
What will winning this mean for you in the future?
Winning means, well, I said last night, means more to me than I think anyone will ever realise, but I think hopefully it will just, I don't know, enable me to do what I want to do, which is bake all the time. I love it, I really, really love it.
In the final, for the signature challenge, the finalists created a 3-layered meringue crown, which Candice filled with Prosecco-soaked berries and pistachio jewels. The technical challenge was a Victoria sponge. And a picnic fit for the Queen was the showstopper challenge. The elements had to include sausage rolls, fruit tarts and a chocolate celebration cake.
The flavour of that is delicious.
It's the final series of Bake Off on BBC One, And the last time Mary Berry, Mel and Sue will appear on the show they've helped build into the most watched programme on British TV.
Everyone is going to be intrigued as to what's going to happen on Channel 4. They're going to get huge ratings for the first episode, I think we all know that. But can they actually keep people watching? Is it going to have that same lovely feel, that escapism, that joy of baking and just the pleasure of beautiful cookware and nice oven doors? Is that still going to be there on Channel 4? We don't know yet.
So yes, it's a programme that's changing channels, but it's also changing TV and has changed people's lives for the contestants that are taking part, giving them the ingredients to follow their dreams. Lisa Mazimba, BBC News.
So look at the weather now. Louise Lear is here. Louise.
Thanks, Simon. Good afternoon, everybody. Some lovely autumn shots behind us. Why am I showing you this? Well, yesterday in Cheshire, it was a beautiful day, actually. So this is a Weather Watchers picture from yesterday with blue sky and sunshine. Temperatures at this time of year there should be around 11 or 12 degrees. They got 19 Celsius. Lucky you, that's the mid-60s Fahrenheit. Today, we could see similar temperatures, actually, with a little bit of sunshine coming through. And after a foggy start this morning, as you can see in Lingfield, pleasant enough. But most of us will stay rather grey, rather cloudy, but quite quiet. So some lovely autumn colours, hopefully, to compensate for those pretty leaden-looking skies. And a lot of cloud on the satellite picture at the moment. The best of the breaks across eastern Scotland, down through central and southern England as well. We're seeing a little bit of sunshine coming through. And with the wind direction coming from a southwesterly, if we get some sunshine, we will get some warmth as well. So we could, again, see temperatures at around 18 degrees, but generally the mid-teens is fairly widespread across England and Wales. A quiet afternoon to come. If you do see some brightness, you will be lucky. Up into the northwest, you might see the cloud thick enough for the odd spot or two of light rain. A similar story into Northern Ireland as well. But up into the extreme northwest of Scotland, to the northwest of the Great Glen, it's windy and wet. Some of that rain could really be quite heavy for a time. It sweeps its way south, but it weakens off as it moves through Northern Ireland, Northwest England and North Wales overnight. Too much of a breeze, hopefully, to cause an issue with some mist and fog further south. To the north, a little chillier, because behind that weather front, which is a cold front, it is starting to drag in slightly cooler air. So a fresher feel to Scotland for tomorrow, but the warm air stays to the south of that weather front and it never really pushes further south. So during Friday, a band of cloud, the odd spot or two of light rain across North Wales and the Midlands. To the south of that, milder. To the north, brighter with some sunshine coming through, but fresher, 9 to 11 degrees perhaps across Scotland and Northern Ireland. As we move into the weekend, what's in store? Well, we keep this quiet, benign October story, mostly dry, some early mist and fog across England and Wales. Always the threat of rain into the northwest. So we could be waking up to scenes like this first thing over the weekend. However, quite quiet. Look at this, a good deal of dry weather in the story. Mostly cloudy, it has to be said, but up into the northwest, we'll see the winds freshening, some rain arriving during Sunday, but the high pressure hangs on. So on Sunday, it does look as though we keep the risk of some rain up into the northwest, sunny spells elsewhere. Enjoy.
Louise, thank you very much. A reminder of our top story this lunchtime. A double boost for Britain. The economy has grown faster than expected following the Brexit vote, and Nissan is building its 2 new models in Sunderland.
This is fantastic news for the British economy from Nissan. This is a very important commitment of investment here in the UK. I think it shows the strength of our economy.
That's all from the BBC News at 1. On BBC One, we now join the BBC's news teams where you are. From me, good afternoon.